to the Business Blueprint Podcast, where we take you on an exciting adventure through our triumphs and challenges and failures in creating and maintaining a thriving 6, 7, and 8-figure business. Get ready to dive into our strategies, decisions, and yes, even valuable lessons we've learned from our missteps. But that's not all. We'll also bring you industry-leading guests who will provide you with their priceless insights and wisdom. Stay tuned because the captivating journey of the Business Blueprint begins right now. Rebecca, can you give me, other than the manager, what are other areas where you've watched somebody take something from you and then take it to the next level?
Yeah. I mean, the example you gave with sales is great. And I would say even just with practicing law, taking that step from being the one doing all the cases to then hiring an attorney who's going to, take over and directly litigate and take that caseload on. That was a major mental hurdle for me at the time. But again, I was devoting however much time per week to client work and then also trying to do the finances and trying to do some sales and trying to do some of this and trying to do some of that. And I wasn't able to devote all the time that I needed to my clients. So bringing somebody in who then spent 40 hours a week just in that mode of litigation and family law, there's an improvement right away. And of course, there's that little bit of transition pain for the client because they know me, they're used to talking to me, and now they have to talk to a new person. And who is this person? And I don't know them and all of that. But once you get past that hurdle and they could see that this person is going to be more available for your questions, this person is going to give you more time and attention, they all get on board pretty quickly with it after that. So I would say that was a major one of those moments where it was like, oh, as much as I love it, as much as I love going to court and litigating these cases and thinking about these really interesting fact patterns and all of that, I had to unload that from my task list every week. And so one way that I can now kind of like dip my toe in that is we have our MH University where we get to talk to all of our newer attorneys each week about just best practices, and we can kind of collaborate, come up with ideas. They talk about their problem cases and we all kind of strategize together. And so I love that now I still have like a little bit of that, but it's just that. It's just a little bit. I'm not directly handling anybody's case, but I can still kind of dip into that area. I think that's kind of the best of both worlds if you can get that.
It is. And you brought up an interesting point about, when you were switching away in the production world, that the clients wanted to directly talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, when you are part of a growth organization and you're moving up kind of in the management level, not moving up, but you're pushing managers under you, how do you handle when your direct reports who now report to somebody else are resistant to that and they're trying to still subvert around the new manager back to you?
It happens. And what I've learned to do is if somebody tries to go around their direct manager and email me, I will always copy that manager on a reply. And after a couple times, they usually get the idea or the hint, right? That, okay, I need to go to this person. But if they don't, then it's a conversation to be had with that employee to say, listen, this is who you report to. If you have any issues or questions, you need to go to them. I always have an open door, so feel free, but go to that person first, and then if you're unhappy, then we can see what needs to be done. But you don't want anybody to feel usurped or to go around, because then they may feel diminished or they may feel devalued, and then to your example earlier, it just is a snowball effect. And then if they come in with a bad attitude, then you're losing good production, and then it just becomes a cancer in the organization. And then if you can stay ahead of that, and really that's where that org chart comes to play, because you know who you report to and accountability, but knowing you have that circle to where we all work together, that's best case scenario. But it happens where others who are used to reporting to a certain manager and now they're reporting to someone else. It's, to me, I look at it more, it's just human instinct, or just being human, that we have this develop this rapport with this person, so we feel more comfortable going to them. So to us, it just makes sense that we ask that person questions. But we need just to have explanation when there's going to be change, why the change. And that's really where it starts. If you're going to make any change, it doesn't matter how large or how small, it's going to have an effect. There's always going to be that ripple effect. And I've learned that too, to where I may think oh, I'm just changing one little thing. It's going to have no effect on everybody else. But that ripple effect, it's like, oh my gosh, that one little change I made ended up being considered a big change. So I've learned that I want to do better in explaining the why. And people appreciate that. And again, it's a lot of just trial and error for management, but it's really just thinking, if I was in that position, what would I want to know? And then really being able to communicate. We always say communicate with your clients. You can't go wrong by over communicating. We've said that on several different podcasts, but that's the same with employees. You really just need to over communicate things, and not just over communicate and say the same thing over and over. It's say it one way, say it another way, because people hear things differently and it resonates differently with others. And so that way, as long as you're taking those steps and having that kind of, they call it the cascading information, then that sets everybody up for success.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Communication, and for me, transparency as well. Not trying to hide from people. Okay, there's going to be a change. This is what the change is going to be. This is what I
Hmm.
expect the outcome of the change to be. And this is what I'm going to do to help you through that change. I mean, there's a very, I'm not sure how old it is, but it's a very well read book, Who Moved My Cheese, which is an allegory about how much people dislike change. And it's a book that I saw a long time ago and always makes me laugh whenever I say the name of it. But when you're bringing in a manager, or even when you're promoting from within a manager, there's another book called The First 90 Days, and it's very interesting if you follow this 3-month rule, the 90-day rule, and say promoted manager, new manager coming in, you're going to take 90 days and learn the position. You're going to talk to the people, and I'm going to transition out of what I do here into what you're going to do. You're
Hmm.
giving the respect to your reports to actually get used to the change, right? We're not just pulling the rug out and saying, hey, it's Friday, Monday this person starts, and Tuesday they will be your new manager. Don't talk to me again. That kind of breaks down the circle because now you're the one not respecting each part of the team. Uh, Rebecca, how do you handle this idea of holding back for 90 days when literally you're very swamped and have no time to do anything?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's not going to get better if you don't do it properly, right? And so I love that book, The First 90 Days, and it's a really good reminder, because it is tempting to say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. Here you go," and just sort of run away, right? And go deal with all the other millions of fires that you have to put out. But if you take the time and do it properly, like you said, it's going to be so much more successful. And in that book, they really go through case studies of good transitions and bad transitions. And the bad transitions are mostly where somebody comes in and it's like a bull in a china shop. They're like, we're going to change our manufacturing facility. We're going to move it from here to there. We're going to change our process from this to that. We're going to change our phone tree from this to that. And they're just making change after change after change after change. And maybe some of them are good, right? But it's just the pure volume of making so many changes so abruptly that nobody has time to adjust or acclimate, or we don't know which thing is causing an improvement here or creating something worse over there. And so all the examples of successes are those that really do take the time to just learn the company, learn its values, learn the culture, meet with every single person they can meet with to really understand what is their vantage point, from talking to the receptionist to talking to a salesperson to talking to someone who's doing a completely different job. If you have an understanding of what each of those people are going through day to day, and you find some sort of common issue, then you can attack that problem first. And then when that's a success, then you can move on to the next thing, right? So you want to build upon success after success rather than just making change just for the sake of making change.
Hmm.
And Dan, how do you coach an executive who's coming into an organization to hold back?
Right. Well, I think most executives probably want to be like, I want to change things, everything right now. But Rebecca hit it spot on, to where you want to talk and understand roles and people, and see if there are some common issues, and what can be done to make things maybe more efficient. What are some of their pain points? What can you do to help out? But really, from an executive standpoint, it's all about listening. And it may feel from an executive's viewpoint that you're not being as productive as you want to be. But really, that listening is so valuable because you don't want to come in and be that bull in a china shop. You want to be able to listen and be able to identify. And then once you have listened and you're developing the rapport with the employees, then you can start to identify where change could happen and then have discussions, but don't change everything at once. Do it unless you have to. There's some situations where there's just some things that have to be done right away. But if not, try to make small and then work your way up. But I always celebrate every win with any team that I'm managing, no matter how small or how big. A win needs to be celebrated because it promotes that camaraderie and the collaboration, and it just really creates a much better environment for the team.
It really does. And, it is incredibly hard to try to come into something where you've been brought in for a very particular purpose to sit back and say, hey, the best way I can accomplish my goals here is to do nothing for a while, is to shut my mouth and listen, which goes against a lot of our natures. Because a lot of us aren't doing what we're doing because we were meek, right? We're doing what we're doing because we're used to pushing. Rebecca, how do you foster a culture to where somebody comes in that you make them believe that you don't want them to do anything for the first 90 days?
Right. I mean, you have to tell them and you have to reinforce it. And it's all through the interview process of this is going to be the expectation of how this transition is going to happen. We don't want somebody to come in and take these actions right away. We want to make sure you understand our company, understand the values, understand and adopt our culture. And once you do that, everyone's going to be so much more receptive to the changes that you're looking to make, right? If you come in and on day one you're trying to make a change, everybody's going to have some major heartburn over that and say, who's this guy? Who does he think he is? And so you're going to ultimately long term be so much more successful if you just take the time to really get involved in the company and become part of the team, and then you can start making those changes, and then everybody's going to view you as a teammate, right, as somebody who helped them to solve a particular problem or to solve some sort of pain point that they were having, and they're going to adopt those other changes that you want to make going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, when we're talking about creating this circular idea within the company, I think it's so important that anybody that would come into any sort of management level sit down and listen, sit down and pay attention, right? Walk into the front door, see what it feels like to walk in the front door. Walk in where all the people that you manage walk in, see what it feels like to walk in with them. Sit with them, look at what it feels like to do their job. I read something about a CEO that took over Best Buy when Best Buy was going down. He went and put on the blue shirt and went out on the floor in Minnesota and sold like everybody else at Best Buy. And he got the feel of it. And that way, when he went and started making changes, everybody knew that he had actually started on the floor. And it was an amazing idea. And I think that's how you keep this circular idea of respect going. Dan, what do you do when you come into an organization and you see an extreme breakdown? And it's because of somebody who it otherwise shows they value every principle of the organization, but there is something they're doing and won't stop doing that is causing a breakdown in this circular idea.
You have to understand. And what I mean by that is listen to what that employee has to say, ask a lot of questions, don't come across like you're cross-examining them. You don't want to put them on the defense. You want to come across from a point of you want to help, but you want to understand what's going on in that division or in that department, that team, whatever the case may be, and get their opinion on how do you feel this team is working, or what are some of the issues that you're seeing, what can we do better, and then just start having them talk. Really just ask probing questions and open-ended questions so they can feel more comfortable. And you don't want to just come out of the gate and say, what the heck is going on? It's, tell me, your role, and are there anything that's affecting this, and are there anything that we can do to make things better for you to be more efficient, and then just kind of start leading up to maybe a little bit more specific questions, but getting them to feel comfortable to open up and knowing that their responses are confidential and there's no punitive nature to it, and you develop that rapport as you're just kind of figuring out what's going on. And then do not make any decisions. You just listen, take notes, go back wherever it is you're going to go back to digest what you've heard, and then start formulating some thoughts and opinions. You have to do further investigation. That it's something that can happen too. And then you go and talk to your leadership team on what you've seen, what you observed, what you've heard, and then start making some recommendations or suggestions, and get the leadership team to weigh in too, because maybe they're seeing the same thing, or maybe they're unaware and they have some ideas. And then you start making some changes slowly. You don't want to just implement right away, unless there's something that's just detrimental to the business or it's going to affect the client. Then there are certain exigent circumstances that would require more urgent communication and making decisions. But otherwise, it's a slow process, and at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the company.
And it's hard to get people to see that sometimes when the company itself benefits, we all benefit, right? It's not just the people at the top that benefit. You're able to make really good moves. You're able to provide better health insurance. You're able to provide better, dental insurance and eye insurance and all sorts of benefits that otherwise you wouldn't be able to give to each and every person. For me, everybody having respect for each other is huge, because I want to break down any sort of barrier of, I have this, if I'm a professional, I'm an attorney, so I must be better than this person within the organization. Well, I like to say, well, yes, you are an attorney, but without sales, you don't get to be an attorney. And, sales are doing a great job. Without the intake team scheduling them on your calendar, you don't get to be a great salesperson. And one of the issues that we run into as we continue to grow is the dehumanization of the people, because everybody's just behind an email. It's no longer 4 people sitting in a small office that see each other every day and say hi. So, Rebecca, what do you do to counterbalance that? I don't want to say dehumanization, but the lack of camaraderie that may exist once you start growing?
Yeah. So you want to have at least somewhat face-to-face conversations as much as you can. So using something like Teams or something like Zoom, where you can at least see each other. And then having some sort of team building, efforts or events, so that, again, it's not just somebody that you communicate with only when there's a problem and only over email or something like that, right? So being able to have some time together face-to-face, doing something that's not work. And then keeping the communication as much as you can to being kind of this verbal face-to-face or virtual face-to-face, because sometimes emails can be taken out of context, and just you have to take the conversation kind of offline in order to bring the relationship back around again. So just encouraging that as much as possible. As us, for an organization, we use Teams a lot. And I think it is really beneficial to be able to just see the person that you're talking to and have that verbal conversation versus going back and forth over an email.
I think it's also very important for the organization for as they continue to grow, to realize the necessity of having functions and events to bring everybody together, so that they get to see each other. Like, we have our holiday party where everybody comes in together from all the states, and they get to talk in person. Dan, how important do you think that is?
It's very important, because you get caught up in the day to day, and you can put a name with the face by being on Teams or Zoom. But when you're in person, there's just something so special about that, because it really does break down any potential barriers there are. And it allows you just to open up and not have conversations about work. And you get to know that person, and you develop that rapport, that relationship. And then once you have that, it really makes things better from a work perspective. You're more efficient. You feel more comfortable being open and honest with one another. And if there are any difficult discussions that have to be made, you feel better and more comfortable having those with that person. And really, the clients benefit from that too, because once you're able to work better together, you're more efficient, you're more excited, and you're moving things forward in a positive manner.
Yeah, I agree. You put that name to a face. I mean, you talk in person, you maybe go to a happy hour together, or just any sort of social event, and people get to even understand your humor or your wit. So now when they read an email from you, they realize, oh, you're not being mean. You're actually trying to be humorous. Like, yeah, I'm a victim of, well, I'm not a victim of it, but everybody who gets an email from me is a victim of my really bad humor. And hopefully it doesn't come across too bad, but I do have to check myself. I had to download Grammarly to make sure that my humor didn't get too far out of control. But you know, a lot of what we talk about is respect, right? Respect between the departments, breaking down these pillars, showing people that we're all human. We're all here for a common good, right? If the organization can succeed, we all succeed. If one person's working to pull the organization down and somehow does a very good job of dipping down the organization within a month, we all hurt, because then, you know, that's when companies have to engage in layoffs and things like that. And so respect and communication becomes so important if you really want to keep this circular idea of a business going and growing. So if you enjoy information like this on, you know, looking at things from the perspective of us who are still going through this growth phase and go through it every day and make mistakes, and we try to celebrate our wins when they come, you know, click like or share this and join us each week as we come back and talk about these topics that we're learning in real time with you to try to help you learn with us. So thank you very much.
Hi, this is Dan Cuneo with the Business Blueprint. Thank you for taking time to listen to this week's podcast. Please join us next week for part 2.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this insightful and entertaining, be sure to hit subscribe below and join us on social media to get more insight into what we are going through each and every day.